damn, are some of the weird ideas I have are pretty fucking weird. Anyway, so welcome once again to another fanfiction idea. I know I've been cranking these out a lot, but I don't know, I've just been having some weird ideas lately, so here you go. Anyway, so this is a Marvel Gravity Falls crossover. I do these a lot, and some of them are stranger than others, and for some reason I just can't let the Pines family get away from the goblins. So anyway, this idea is a kind of Spider-Man story, but more Marvel, really. It's more of a Marvel idea. So this idea I had is that the Dipper and Mabel have returned to Gravity Falls, and they discover that there's been kind of a power shift going on, in that there is now a bunch of, like, low-level gangsters or superpowered criminals just kind of running around the Northwest area. Mostly because they're either A, chased out by the Kingpin, or B, chased out of the West Coast by any other criminals who don't want to deal with the Kingpin. So, it's now, the Northwest, Northern territories, especially, like, the Northwest territories, are now, like, a breeding ground for a bunch of villains. You've got, like, the Crime Master, you've got, the Purple Man, you've got, a new Rose, you've got, a bunch of gangster, like the Owl and all of them vying for control, and Gravity Falls to them is very important because their sources tell them that there is, like, a good it's a good staging ground. It's a good place to, like, funnel drugs and weapons through. So all these gangs are kind of, like, vying for control over Gravity Falls because that's, like, a good standoff point to, like, sell off weapons and drugs to. So the Pines family is like, we ain't doing that, but it's not like, hey, we cannot fight super criminals, alright? And we can't exactly go talk to the Avengers or the Fantastic Four or Spider-Man to be like, hey, can you help us out? So they get the idea of, why don't we just help ourselves? If you can't beat them, make it look like we joined them. So the Pines family gets together with a bunch of their allies and is like, hey, what if we pretended to be the new player in town? What if we just scared everyone off of Gravity Falls and chased them out in our own way? We can't depend on superheroes because there's no fucking superheroes in Oregon. So what do? We'll pretend to be a supervillain. So it's kind of like a Breaking Bad situation. So the twins get this idea of, let's pretend to be the Hobgoblin. And the reason why they come to this conclusion is because we need a villain who's scary, and if we take their identity, they won't come after us, because if we became the Green Goblin, the real Green Goblin would figure it out and come get us. Or, it also needs to be a villain we can look believably like. And apparently everyone and their mother has been the Hobgoblin at some point, so I don't think it's going to matter. Plus, the real Hobgoblin is probably too busy fighting Spider-Man. So yeah. Totally cool with it. Let's just be let's just be the Hobgoblin, or a Hobgoblin, and chase these fuckers out, because there's nothing scarier than a big orange guy in a glider. Also, another thing is that the twins have kind of gone through a growth spurt, so they can actually look a little more believable as the Hobgoblin. And in this, it's not just Dipper wearing the costume, Mabel also wears the costume to also keep the heat off. So here's how it all plays out, is that McGucket builds the tech for them. He actually builds, like, a new glider. He builds, like, pumpkin bombs. He builds all kinds of stuff. You also have Pacifica, who, even though her family has kind of, like, lost a lot of money, they're still, like, she's still well off. She's still a very well off person, so she actually funds a lot of the work, funds a lot of the tech, and funds a lot of the aid that is provided, that is kind of needed to make this facade work. And Gideon also provides, like, illusionary stuff. Like, he's a showman, and he also, a fun thing I had is that he actually teaches the Pines twins to be, like, a showman. Like, hey, I was kind of a villain, so let me show you how to talk like one. So he puts them through classes to make them more believable as the Hobgoblin. Because that was the thing, is, like, both Dipper and Mabel both kind of share the costume as the Hobgoblin. Similar to how, well, there was a short time where Roderick Kingsley forced his brother Daniel to be the Hobgoblin. So, it was kind of like that, but it's a more likable term. So that was the idea, and so yeah, that was kind of the fun idea I had, is that they're pretending to be the Hobgoblin to scare off everyone else and be like, yeah, the Hobgoblin rules Gravity Falls, and behold my Goblin Gang. It's basically everyone else in Gravity Falls who are like, yeah, we're the Goblin Gang. And that was the idea, is that they take on all these other criminal groups to fight and take back their town, and it's not like, hey, these aren't like monsters we can just magic away, or I mean, like, yeah, we've taken on monsters and shit like that, and crime lords. That's easy. It's a cakewalk compared to what all the other shit we've done. So that was the idea. Also, Dipper and Mabel also, under the suggestion of Stan, because he says, look, if you're going to be the Hobgoblin, you need to make yourself look like a presentable crime lord, because the Hobgoblin, no one's going to believe that the Hobgoblin is a crime lord. No one's going to believe that he's this, like, kingpin. He needs to look like he's a bodyguard. This Hobgoblin needs to look like he's a bodyguard, because you can't have, people are going to be like, well, Hobgoblin, obviously, we need a gun for him. So, Dipper, along with what money Pacifica has, rebuilds himself, and so does Mabel and the rest of the Pines family. They rebuild themselves to look like these aristocratic gangsters. Like, hey, we're the prestigious Pines family, and we run the crime here in this little town. So that's what they make themselves look like. And kind of like classic Tony Stark with Iron Man, it's kind of this moment where they make it look like, oh, the Hobgoblin's our muscle. The Hobgoblin is totally our muscle. It would either be like Dipper is the Hobgoblin and Mabel's kind of talking with everybody. He's like, hey, my brother's not here. I brought the Hobgoblin, though. Or Dipper's in town. He's talking to all the crime lords, and he's like, I brought the Hobgoblin here to make sure you guys understand what the fuck's going on. I'm in charge. I rule. So all of the crime goes through me. But there's a few other things I had in here, like you have a new Demo Goblin who turns out to be Robbie, because in this story, Robbie in here had an accident the year prior, and he was visited by the Demo Goblin. And the Demo Goblin, for those who remember, was sent back, quote-unquote died, / sent back to hell after Jason Macendale killed him. And Jason Macendale was the second Hobgoblin who bonded with him during the storyline Inferno. I'm such a fucking nerd. Oh my god. But basically, yeah. Demo Goblin is like, hey, I will bond with you and you will help me carry out my holy mission to kill all sinners. And Robbie's like, cool, I don't want to fucking die. So he becomes the new Demo Goblin and becomes like a new adversary, even though it's not King. Even the Pines are like, we're not Macendale, you idiot. He's like, don't care, you're still evil. But I wanted to also have that it's kind of like a mystery of who's the new Demo Goblin, kind of like who was the new Hobgoblin. There's also another idea I had where the twins actually are forced into a situation where they have to take a hostage, and it turns out to be Gail Watson. Now, if you don't, here's some deep cut for you Spider-Man fans. Gail Watson is Mary Jane's estranged sister, who no one talks about. She has... the last time I think we saw her was in the Clone Saga. But yeah, Gale and his... and her daughter. Gale and her son, excuse me. Gale and her son are living in, Gravity Falls to, get away from everything. That's kind of the thing. And when the Hobgoblin takes them as a hostage for one point and scares the shit out of them, they let him go. But that kind of draws, Mary Jane, who's like, oh my god, my sister and my nephew just got attacked by the fucking Hobgoblin. So Spider-Man's like, yep, well, I'm gonna figure out why the Hobgoblins, why is Kingsley all the way in a town in Oregon? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. Better figure this out. So you do have a classic Spider-Man Hobgoblin fight. Another thing is that the Pines actually upgrade their tech with the weapons that Ford actually confiscated in his time in the multiverse. There's also another thing in here where in case both the twins are needed, in case there needs to be someone's really like, hey, how come we only see one of you at a time? there's also a point where Wendy actually puts on the costume to make it look like, hey, it's totally this Hobgoblin and not the twins. So that was kind of the idea on a whole. So you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think of this idea? Do you guys like it, hate it? What kind of villains what kind of crime bosses slash villains would you want to see in here? And what other villains in general, Marvel villains, would you want to see them encounter? And what kind of tech would they carry as the Hobgoblin? But once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.